Right now is the best possible moment there has ever been in the show for the female Doctor.
Hello and welcome to The Fan Show and our third and final part of our interview with Stephen Moffat about what it's like to run TV's greatest sci-fi show. In this final part, Stephen brings us up to date via the casting of the 12th Doctor, Clara and Bill Potts. You said that you had a shortlist of one name for your new Doctor and it kept coming back to you, Peter Capaldi. Why him?
You can never quite work out why someone lodges in your head. It was the same with Matt in a way, the moment I'd seen his audition. We carried on auditioning, but I knew the game was up because I couldn't see the Doctor as anyone but him. I knew he was a fan. I just wanted to see what he'd do with the Doctor. No one would question for a second he's one of the best actors in the country. No one would question that. I knew he might say yes. And the moment I thought of him playing the Doctor, I couldn't bear to think somebody else. We've had two, quirky young men as the Doctor. A third quirky young man looks like a formula as opposed to a new exciting idea. But, cranky old eyebrows and a Scottish accent and all that ferocity and all that overt intelligence that surrounds him like a mist. That would just be so amazing. So, having thought of that and being unable to leave it behind, I asked Mark, because I always ask Mark things, what's your list? Because Mark knows every actor in the country and is personal friends with all of them, which is remarkable. And he said he'd make a list, and so he made a list. And at the top name of the list is Peter Capaldi, with sort of, definitely him, and a big gap under it, and then the other actors. So I thought, it's in the air. When I suggested it to Andy and Brian, a moment, and then and so everyone was just excited at the idea of Peter.
And you didn't think at all his age would be a risk?
I thought it was a risk. I don't think if you're casting the Doctor without thinking it's a risk, then what are you doing? You could cast another David Tennant. You could cast another Matt Smith. Is that interesting? You know you're onto a winner when people are saying, "Oh, I'm not sure. That's a bit different. Should we be doing that?" That is immediately exciting. For me, this sort of reference point in terms of the classic series was when Tom Baker left. I had a very long list in my head of who it should be. And I was obviously shocked when they announced Peter Davison was it, because he was far too young and far too pretty as far as I was concerned. But then I instantly became fascinated by seeing him. I couldn't wait to see how the Doctor would be being so undoctor-like. And he became one of my absolute favourites because he was so good. He was just so good. You thought, there is absolutely no reason, none at all, why the Doctor shouldn't be a pretty young man. Just as people are about to see within minutes, within seconds, there's absolutely no reason why Jodie Whittaker can't be the Doctor.
So were you not tempted to choose a woman or person of colour?
Yes, many times. We auditioned people of colour when we were looking for Matt. We never successfully landed one. Could you have replaced Chris with a woman? I don't think so. The show was too young. It was too much of a wrench at that point. I don't think you'd have got away with it. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think it would have worked. The show was still forming. Could you have replaced David's sexy, laddish, romantic lead Doctor with a woman? I would have said no. I'd have said we'd be in trouble with that. That would again have been too soon. Matt's more sexless, more amiable, more disconnected, more alien Doctor? Possibly you could do that. I mean, that would certainly be the first time it becomes a possibility, I would say, that you wouldn't feel that you were wrenching the audience somewhere they didn't want to go. The honest answer to that is, why didn't I? Because I was obsessed with casting Peter Capaldi. That was it. I mean, I wanted to. I knew that he was a fan. I knew that he was one of the best actors in the country. I knew he would probably say yes if I asked him. And I thought, wouldn't it be terrible if we never got to see what Peter Capaldi could do with the Doctor? So Peter Capaldi was the one and only person who I was interested in playing the Doctor during that time. I think right now is the best possible moment there has ever been in the show for the female Doctor. Because I think everybody is now keen, or at least a substantial majority. I haven't spoken to a single person who hasn't been enthused. I think establishing carefully that it was an option for the Doctor to turn into a woman, embedding it in the show so everyone thinks it's always been there, and then doing it makes sense, makes people impatient for it to happen. So it's not so long ago when this was not raised at all. The very first time it's raised is when Matt Smith wonders if he's a woman. That's it. Within the show, within the fiction of the show.
Yeah.
Then of course we have the Master into Missy. Then we have the General into the General.
Is that a conscious decision on your part to plant the seeds, if you like?
Well, look, Chris made this decision on his own with no consultation with me, right? So I'm not taking any credit for the bold and brilliant choice of Jodie Whittaker, who is going to be amazing. All I'd ever say that you always have to keep your eye on in Doctor Who is you must expand what it can do, not contract what it can do. Yes, absolutely, the Master into Missy is a sort of test balloon for a popular character, a known character, a character people sort of think they have ownership of becoming a woman. Would people go with that or not? Would everyone go? Would most people go? The very first stages, people tend to forget when Dark Water went out. Some people were really cross. Not most people, but some people. And then everyone was just won over by Michelle Gomez. And now, when the Master and Missy met in World Enough and Time, no one had the slightest problem. No one ever doubted that they were the same person. No one ever really mentioned in the when people talked about the very funny interaction between those two actors. No one ever bothered to mention. I mean, they talked about the fact the two of them were there, that one had changed slightly. No one ever mentioned that they were opposites.
You just don't bat an eyelid, really,
You just
do
don't
you?
think about it.
Yeah.
So at that point, the audience stops thinking, could the Doctor be a woman? Then starts thinking, why isn't the Doctor a woman?
Yeah. Jenna was already the companion, already playing Clara. How hard is it to pair an existing companion with a new Doctor?
I don't think it's particularly hard. I mean, you are casting the two of them together always. So you are already thinking, Peter Capaldi is going to be next to Jenna Coleman. But that just seemed to me to work straight away. It didn't feel like a problem to me at all. I always thought that with Jenna and Matt's Doctor, Jenna was so forceful and so much, and so much the organizer and so much the person pushing back against the Doctor. So the control freak gag that we have. But if you've seen the first few episodes, which I've watched quite recently, she's so in command of the Doctor. And Matt just being the Matt Doctor, being sweet and adorable, and he just rolls on his back and says, "Well, tickle my tummy then. That's great, fantastic. I'm a puppy now." Whereas once the Capaldi Doctor turns up, and he's much more ferocious and uncontrollable, I felt we actually got something really quite dynamic with the two of them. How do they negotiate that friendship, given that the implicit, straightforward assumption on both their parts is that they're in charge?
Yeah. It's a bit of a power struggle, really, isn't it?
It's a power struggle, but it's a power struggle between people who adore each other, but neither of whom are particularly adept at expressing that. I think one of the favourite things I've ever done in Doctor Who is of the Doctor Who that I've done is the scene in Hellbent when she finally figures out he was in the confession dial for 4.5 billion years. And her reaction to that, and her realising what she's unleashed, and what impact she's had on him, and what he's actually like under those eyebrows. I think it's one of the best played scenes ever in Doctor Who when she just says, "Why did you do that?"
Yeah. Many fans have commented on the power dynamic between the companion and the Doctor, and that changing since she became Clara Who. Why did you decide to go down this route?
I thought, what are you going to do? What is the story of each companion, of each person who starts interacting with the Doctor? The one that hadn't really been done was the one who says, I wonder if I could be like that. The one who gets a bit too addicted to the time travel adventure that he's addicted to, not as a pastime, not as something on the way to the altar, as it was in a way with Amy. Amy was actually in love with Rory, and she wanted that life, and she wanted to go and have a life with Rory, like most of us do. We want to have an adventure, have a great time. You're still doing all that, and eventually, actually, what we want is to get a nice house, a comfy chair, and a nice view, and a gin and tonic. That's really what we're looking for. I'm not looking to run away with Doctor Who and get shot at. So most people go into the TARDIS say, "What a great last round the universe before I get on with proper life and mowing the lawn." What if Clara's the one who says, "I can't go back"?
You can argue that Clara has had more influence on the Doctor's life than any other companion. She's been scattered throughout his timeline, tells him to steal a TARDIS from Gallifrey, grabs his ankle as a kid and teaches him that fear is a superpower. Is she too important?
Too important? I don't know that's what you said there is actually true. First of all, he teaches her that fear is a superpower, and she repeats it back to him before he said it. Let's get the timeline right. Too important?
What, Stephen?
No, I mean, I think if you're ever going to be writing about a companion in Doctor Who, you make the companion you're writing about right now the most important one there's ever been. And you could equally argue that Rose is the one that pulls him out of his manic depression and resurrects him as an engaged, heroic figure. That she's the one who gets him out the trauma ward and back in charge of the universe. I think you could strongly argue that she's even more important. But you always want to make them tremendously important to the Doctor. Otherwise, what story you're telling? You'd be telling the story of something that didn't really matter very much to the Doctor. Well, what's the point in that story?
Yeah. Rumours circulated that Jenna Coleman would leave at the end of the 2014 Christmas special, last Christmas. Were you prepared to write her out at that point?
Yes. Death in Heaven was her exit, written and filmed as her exit. We were keen to keep her. We wanted to keep her, but she was going. Peter was very, very keen. He was dreading the idea of her leaving, so he was particularly keen that we kept her. It was on the World Tour where we were publicising the first run, and we'd finished making it. It was finished. It was done. That we talked her into doing another series. At that point, I'd already persuaded her by the World to come back and do Christmas, and I've got a big ending for you where you turn out to be an old lady and you die at the end as an old lady. That was the original ending to Last Christmas, and the ending we had at the read-through. And I was eyeing up the possibility of writing the part of Shona as the replacement and all that. And after the read-through, we went into a side room with Jenna, where she wasn't ready to go. She thought she was ready to go. And I think in my heart, I knew she wasn't ready to go. And she said, I don't think I'm actually ready to go. And I said, well, if you're not ready to go from a job like this and a show like this, you shouldn't go. It's too damaging. It's too emotional. Yeah. It's too big to leave before you're ready. You mustn't do that.
You mentioned there just briefly that you were writing up Shona to be the next companion. Would it have been someone like Shona from Last Christmas or someone like Bill? Would that have been the next
Well, there's a commonality between the two. There's a slight... I knew where I wanted to go next was a kind of earthy irreverence, I guess. If I put it down in the most basic terms. I hadn't got a fully developed character, but I was messing around with that.
And were you pleased with the reception that Bill and Nardole got?
Oh, God, yes. God, yes. That seemed to go down really well.
What was it like to write TARDIS team again? Because it's been some years since with Amy and Rory.
I quite like three of them. I've got to be honest. I think it's a better shape of the show, and most of the episodes I've written have had three.
Yeah.
But sometimes because I've discreetly added River or something, the two of them going off and being able to talk about things without the Doctor there, it makes the Doctor the third point of a triangle as opposed to the slightly dominant of a duo. Do you know what I mean? Moving
back to the Doctor, in 1995 you wrote on a message board a theory that you later used on TV that we get the word Doctor from him.
Yeah.
In The Night of the Doctor, we see him disavow his name and become the Warrior. Much of the Capaldi era is taken up with the Doctor's struggle and failure to become a good man. Why the fascination with our lead character's morality?
Because I think the whole show's about that. I think the whole show's always about that. I don't think the whole show's about that just during the Capaldi era. Which of the Doctors has an unequivocal relationship with heroism? I don't think any of them do. First of all, he's not a professional hero. He doesn't go out seeking out trouble. He isn't restoring balance to the universe. Sometimes he says he is because he's trying to impress somebody, but he isn't. He's larking about. He's trying to have lunch with Marie Antoinette. He's going to go and look at a steam engine exhibition. He's going to go to a fairground. He's going to watch supernovas. He's having a laugh out there. He is certainly not intending to become the fulcrum of the universe. He does not want to be that. He has no interest in that. And now and then he gets caught up in situations where his boundless compassion and its more proactive form of kindness is activated, and he has to help. He is the passerby who always becomes the last man standing because of his powerful emotional reaction to people in trouble or people who need help. He's not seeking them out. He just does that as a moment by moment, almost emotional thing. He's not always right in what he does. I mean, sometimes he's too emotional. Sometimes he's silly. What he does to save Clara after Face the Raven is absolutely insane. It doesn't work. He puts everyone in danger because it's not even just because of his great love of Clara, although he loves all his companions. He loves Clara too. But it's because that wasn't fair. That wasn't right. No, but that shouldn't have happened. So I don't think he sees himself as necessarily good or decent or any of these things. I think he sees these ideas as wonderful to aspire to, which is why, in terms of the way I write the Doctor, the idea of the Doctor is that to which he aspires. He would like to be the Doctor, but he's not the Doctor. He's a bloke who stole a time machine for fun and hijinks. That's what he did. He did it for a giggle. He did it for a laugh. He did it for fun. He's got this idea in his head, developed over years, that he could be like the Doctor, but the Doctor is a fictional construct. The man who is never cruel and never cowardly isn't him, because sometimes he is cruel and sometimes he is cowardly, and that's where he's failing to live up to this idea.
We also seem fascinated by the Doctor's origin story too. We get to see him leave Gallifrey.
Or the absence of it.
Or the Well, I don't know, because we get to see him leave Gallifrey. We get to see him fighting in the Time War. We see him as a little lonely boy in his bed. You've even found time to connect the classic series with New Who by regenerating the Eighth Doctor. You've described yourself as the most besotted fanboy on the planet, but where do you draw the line? How much should you show and how much should be left to your imagination?
I think you have enough room to leave sort of ambiguity, leverage. That some of it can be ignored if you don't want it. If you don't want that in your personal head canon, which is the only place that Doctor Who is real, is in the head canons of the people who watch it. If you don't want that, if you don't want that to be the little boy, him to be the little boy in that bed, it's okay.
Yeah.
Maybe it was the Master. There could be all sorts of different interpretations if you don't want that. There are things that we don't go into. I mean, where's Mrs. Who is the big one? Because there isn't any real room for doubt here that he had a granddaughter. There isn't any real room for doubt that Time Lords reproduce much the same way we do, because we've seen Time Lords and humans get together. So he had not only did he have a granddaughter, he must have children, he must have a wife, he had a dynasty, he had a family. Where did they all go? Why did he end up with only his granddaughter travelling in that time machine? He's given conflicting accounts of why he runs around the universe, and I think it's fine to add to those conflicting accounts, so long as you never make one definitive. And I always think about that when people ask that question. I say, what do you do for a living? When did you decide? And everyone's got a confused answer. You don't know why you are the person you are or why you did, and the reasons change from day to day. So he's like that. We don't do the story of why he left in the first place and what happened to everybody else. As Chris does it, in which case it's a very good idea. So long as there is room for manoeuvre and you can have your own version of it, then it's fine. And you're not allowed to say what his name is. That's it. That's fine.
Yeah. Let's talk about making the decision to leave. When did you know it was time to go?
I started to realise I'd written an awful lot of Doctor Who. I think I've written more television Doctor Who, I think, than anybody else. I realised I was never going to get to the point where I was bored of it, or tired of it, or tired by it. I was fine. I was absolutely fine. If you asked me to sit, if there was an emergency and they said, please God, could you write another, please could someone help us and write another Doctor Who story? I could write one. I can do that. I've got form. I know how a Doctor Who story works. I can still do that. But, I'm 55. I want to write other things. I don't want that to be the only thing I've done. It is 10 years since I started developing Sherlock with Mark and said yes to the Doctor Who job. 10 years surely is enough. It helped that last year on the show was incredible as far as the workload was concerned, because again, with the brilliant scheduling of Sherlock around Doctor Who, they happened at exactly the same time. And in the same year, I did, this is ridiculous, 3 new Sherlock films and 14 new episodes of Doctor Who. I took Chris out for dinner, just as a friend, just to hear what he was up to, but really to work out what his diary was, because I knew he was the BBC's favourite and my favourite to take over. And I was sort of asking casual questions like, are you doing a 3rd series of, I don't know, Broadchurch? And I was thinking, oh dear God, so I'm doing series 10 then. So I took him out for dinner again a month later at the same table, sitting in the same place in the same restaurant saying, okay, if I do the next series of Doctor Who, can you take Doctor Who from me at the end of that?
Well, just as there were 2 years between the announcement that you were the new showrunner and the 11th hour, there has been 2 years since the announcement that you were leaving and your final episode. Was it odd giving effectively 2 years' notice, and is it like writing on death row?
It's 2.5 years since I sat down with Chris. and it's over 2.5 years since I told the BBC I was leaving, I have done whole jobs that have taken less time than the time it's taken me to find the door on Doctor Who. It's been ludicrous. I'm noticeably older than I was when I quit. So, is it like writing on death row? Could have been. You could have been thinking, I'm going to write the end of days. I'm going to write the march to the scaffold. But I couldn't bear that idea. It's 14 brand new Doctor Who's. Let's treat it like the beginning. That's what I called the first episode, the pilot.
Yeah.
I just thought, right, let's just start it all over again. Yeah. And who gives a damn that I'm leaving? Literally nobody.
Aww.
Not even my kids care that I'm leaving. So there's no story in that. Let's just make a brand new, celebratory, invigorated beginning, rather than some sort of ghastly idea that I'm writing my last in my condemned cell. So it's not like writing on death row, where the deadline would be substantially worse.
Do you feel that you've done everything you want to do?
Probably. I mean, I did everything I could think of, and the moment I had an idea, I just did it.
Yeah.
I was always, I never wanted to sort of squirrel away ideas. Sometimes I had things that hadn't worked out yet, and that I came back to later. As soon as I had an idea, I was writing it in a way, or getting someone else to write it. I mean, what will happen, and what still happens, is I'll think of an idea for Doctor Who and realise I've got nowhere to put it. But that's
I'm sure there are places. Big Finish. In 2008, when you took the role, you described it as the best and toughest job on television. Do you feel the same way now?
Oh, it's absolutely the best and toughest job on television. Yes, absolutely, absolutely. There is nothing about television that you cannot learn to do better or to do at all on Doctor Who. It's everything. Comedy, drama, the logistics of it, the invention of it, the speed of it, the intensity of it, the profile of it. Everything is there. I'd say everything is there in miniature, but it's not. Everything's there full size. It's like a full-scale model of everything else.
Yeah. Somewhere out there right now, hopefully watching this, is a future showrunner of Doctor Who.
Yes, there is.
Yeah, definitely.
Definitely watching this. Yeah.
What piece of advice would you give them?
I suppose the advice you'd have to give somebody who longs for a job like this, even as they know from the boring words of me and the boring words of Russell how tough it will be, is ignore how tough it is. Ignore all of that. It is the most extraordinary job and the most extraordinary period of your life that you will ever experience. It is absolutely, genuinely amazing. It will get on top of you every single day. But it is extraordinary. If you forget for more than 2 hours consecutively that you are privileged to be here, get the hell out. And I never did. I never, ever, throughout my entire time on the show, even when I was in my last year so tired I could barely stand, I never forgot that sort of glorious feeling of I'm the showrunner of Doctor Who. I do this. Hardly anyone alive in any walk of life has done their childhood dream job. The actual one, not someone similar to it, the actual dream job. I have, Peter Capaldi has, Russell T Davies has, David Tennant has. You know, we've done the actual job. That experience of being alive is incredibly rare. So it's an honour, a privilege, but honours and privilege are utterly boring. It is, above all else, and through all the pain and the effort of it, an extraordinary and unrepeatable joy.
I would ask you what you would like your Doctor Who to be remembered for. And knowing you, you're probably going to say something along the lines of, I'd like to be remembered. But I will tell you, you've given us a magical, scary, timey-wimey Doctor Who, one of epic stories of love, hope and determination, even in the face of insurmountable odds. And you've given us a moral hero, or at least one who tries to be, who is never cruel and never cowardly. So, obviously from all the fans and from us, a big thank you.
You're very welcome.
Well, thank you so much, Stephen, for joining us, and thank you guys at home for watching. To catch up on all 3 parts of our interview with Stephen, click here, and to subscribe to the official Doctor Who YouTube channel, click here. We'll see you soon.